Okay, so in the next video we're just going to have a look at inversely proportional, sort of keeping in line with last week's work. So I'm going to highlight the keywords in this sentence. We're told that y is inversely proportional to x cubed. Okay, so it's not just x this time, it's x cubed. So if I'm looking at doing the first question, which is to find the equation linking y and x, again, I'm going to just draw a little diagram for you to see what the relationship is like between these two, because it's always really useful to be able to visualize it. So remember, if it's inversely, that means we're going to get a fraction, so it's going to be like 1 over, and it's x cubed, so it'd be x cubed. Now if you ever use any online graphs to sort of sketch this out and look at what it gives you, you'll find that you get a curve that looks a little bit like this. Okay, it never touches the y-axis and it never touches the x-axis, but it gets really close, and we generally tend to call these our reciprocal functions. So if I was answering the question, you wouldn't need to draw this, but like I say, I think it's really good to be able to visualize what it looks like. So as x increases, the value of y gets smaller and smaller, okay, because you're dividing by a bigger number, it's going to make that get smaller. If I have a look then, finding the equation that linked them, I'd start off with my little fish. So y is inversely proportional, so as I said before, that means we've got 1 over, and it says here x cubed. So y is inversely proportional to 1 over x cubed. If I wanted to then work out what the equation was, I'd make an equal sign, I'd introduce my constant of proportionality, and then we need to find out what that value of k is. Now to do that, I've got 3 variables at the moment, y, k and x. I've been given the value of 2 of those variables, so I know the variable y and the variable x. So if I substitute those in, I'll be able to find out what this value of k is. So when y is equal to 6, I don't know the value of k, but I do know that x is equivalent to 2. So 2 cubed. Okay, and that gives us, so 6 is equal to k over 8. And if I rearrange, I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. And so I will get 48 is equal to k. Now that isn't the end of the question. I need to actually write down what the equation is. So the equation is that y is equal to 48 all over x cubed. Your equation should include the y and the x and the value for that constant of proportionality. So here is my final answer for part 1. So part 2, now you've got your equation, it asks you to find the value of x when y is equal to 20. So I'm going to write that out, y is equal to 20, and I'm going to substitute that into this equation. So with these questions you can't do part 2 or part B unless you have done part A. And usually, where the questions link to each other, you've got sort of called dotty 1 and dotty 2. Okay, if it's A and B, they're generally more separate, and you're not going to use your answers from the previous part. So 48 over x cubed. I'm going to substitute that y for 20. Now, if you remember this from last week, what we are able to do is sort of just swap the 20 and the x around, but again, I don't like to assume, so we'll go through it step by step. I don't want to have my x cubed in the denominator. I want to do what we call make it the subject of the formula. So I want my formula to say x equals, and then, you know, whichever it equals to there. So if I multiply both sides by x cubed, it means that I won't have it in this denominator anymore. So on this side, I will have 20x cubed, and that now is equal to 48. Again, I'm aiming to get the x on its own, so I don't want the 20 there. At the moment I'm multiplying by 20, so to kind of get rid of that, I'm going to divide it by 20. So I get x cubed is equal to 48 over 20. And finally, I still want to have an x on its own. Now if that said x squared, I'd take the square root. As it says x cubed, I'm going to take the cube root. So x is equal to the cube root of this 48 over 20, And for you to find that in your calculator, it is usually this function here. As you can see, I've already got it in there. So if I press Shift and your square root button, you'll see it comes up with the little 3 there, which shows you you're doing the cube root. 48 over 20, we can type that in as it is. We're going to get our answer there of 1.3 to 1 decimal place. So x would be 1.3 to 1 decimal place. Again, you can write it to 2 decimal places, but if the question stipulates, just make sure you stick to that. And that's the question done.